So for people who are anxious, I will say this. My anxiety over time has gone down, even as things have gotten worse. Early on in this, someone posted a paper about crisis communications and about how if you've got a public health thing like this, actually you should communicate early and you should say things might get bad early because there's apparently something called an adjustment reaction where you kind of want people to do the freaking out before things are bad. And I've found that to be the case for me, that like I was most worried about it early on, but now I'm kind of oriented towards, what I think might happen near term, long term. And I was even seeing that like when I was looking at my chat history yesterday, how like there were just some things early on, like when American Airlines or some airline canceled their flights to China, how that just seemed like such a big deal at the time.
Mhm.
Whereas now that would be a very small thing. So I think that for people who are very anxious right now, that there's a reasonable chance that your anxiety will go down over time, sort of as you acclimate or just kind of do some sense making, and you can really kind of position yourself in what's going on. And luckily, like I said, for me that was earlier. So I think for about a month now, this has felt less dreadful than it did in the first month for me.
That's really great to hear. I have had the same experience as a therapist, both with individuals and with groups, where especially right after there were shelter in place efforts, I think that made everything feel really real to people that weren't already following it detail by detail. And right in that first week to 10 days, it seemed like there was a lot of people that were really feeling suddenly very anxious, suddenly really afraid, suddenly um, having a lot of anticipatory anxiety about how long this was going to last. And I've also seen that people seem to be, it's like adjusting and it's feeling more normal. I wonder also if it's not just kind of adjusting to the new normal, but also the way someone relates to uncertainty and anticipatory anxiety. So it sounds like you did a good job in my language, figuring out kind of signal versus noise, like figuring out how to contribute efficaciously to problems and then how to let go of uncertainties. And then that might make you a little bit less sensitive to the palpable uncertainty that we're all facing.
Yeah, totally. Like one of the things that was helpful was kind of identifying. I think when I was most anxious, I was doing this form of avoidance where I would just seek more and more information and like share the worst news with my friends, and they were doing the same to me. So we had this like kind of negative feedback loop going on of bad news. And talking to you actually was kind of trying to figure out why we would do that. And I think it felt like when you see a piece of bad news like that, you kind of feel scared, and you don't want to feel scared alone. And what you really want is probably some support and some encouragement that things will be okay. But since that's basically unknowable, like I basically told my friends, hey, let's stop sharing bad news with each other. Like we all know, that things are trending towards away from the ordinary. So maybe we shouldn't continue to share bad news with each other. And I started to think that at least for my information seeking, I wasn't just going to sit and refresh the page. I was going to try to ask myself the question of like, do I know what I need to know right now to to kind of take the next steps? So like before the shelter in place stuff, I was very anxious and bought some food and stuff like that to have on hand in case we were unable to get that. And kind of once I had that plan in place, it was like, well, what do I need more information for? And so I've tried to use that a little bit as well as like, do I need more information to make necessary plans that I might need to make, about like what if a loved one gets sick, or what if the store is out of X, Y, or Z. and that's been pretty helpful as well. Now, though, I feel like I've got a little bit more balance in terms of the way that I'm consuming that information. I don't think I'm just sort of anxiously clicking for the next story, looking for either a distraction from anxiety I'm feeling, or maybe a piece of good news or something like that. Like, I feel like I've got a more balanced approach.
Yeah, and I want to hear more about that because I like to think about the news right now as an intrusion. So you could have an internal intrusion, which would be an unwanted intrusive thought that arrives with a spike of anxiety, or a worried thought that arrives with a spike of anxiety. But you can also have external intrusions, and the news seems to be bombarding people sometimes with just it's intrusive because it is worrisome, and then it arrives with a spike of anxiety, and then you have the urge to figure out what's happening or share it with someone else, or like do something about it in a way that current
Uh-oh.
events don't always make people feel like they have to do something about it immediately. So it seems like you've managed the intrusiveness of it.